this day has not been a randomized controlled trial study showing that cloth masks stop COVID or reduce COVID. Not after all this time, when you had all the hysteria about it, when it became basically almost like a religion for some people, you still haven't been able to produce the evidence, and that's because for 100 years nobody really thought that that would be something that would work. It was only with COVID that people started to change. So it's basically mandating somebody to do a booster and then treating them different in the workplace with discriminating against. It literally will take people. If you have the booster, you can eat lunch normally. If you don't, you got to be segregated in the corner for not having the booster. Maybe they make you wear a mask, all this stuff, even though the boosted person is more likely to be getting it. So it's insane, it's irrational, and so no discrimination on this vax status, no requirements of masking in lieu of vax or for any other reason, and those are really, really important. You know, sometimes you just have to say enough is enough, and you think you'd be enough, but you still see it all over this country. The other thing that we're going to do, that we worked with the legislature last legislative session to do, and Joe Ladapo and I were very supportive of, the legislature decided not to pass this in the end. They will pass it this year. I've already talked to the leadership. But we want to have our medical practitioners, particularly our physicians, be protected with the freedom to be able to speak the truth. You should not... You should not be in a situation like in California where if you buck the medical establishment, if you dissent from conventional wisdom, then they can even take away your license to practice at all. No, in Florida, we want to protect people's ability to follow the evidence and to choose evidence over narrative. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of these institutions, including many medical institutions, become very politicized. When you started to see the forced masking of students by the American Academy of Pediatrics, that was never anything that people thought was okay. Then the teachers' unions wanted it, and so they came out and said, you have to have all these rigid requirements. So I think Americans have seen a lot of these institutions behave very politically. They've indulged in partisanship, and when you go away from evidence-based medicine and you start embracing ideology, you start to do things that aren't in the public's interest. And so if you think about our medical establishment from Fauci on down over the last 3 years, you know, they were wrong about lockdowns. They were wrong about mask mandates. They were wrong about school closures. They were wrong about mRNA shots. They were wrong about vax passports and vax mandates, and really on and on it goes. And so the physicians that were speaking out against some of these things, they were really treated very poorly. So in Florida, we're going to make sure that those physicians are free to speak and free to offer their opinions, regardless of whatever may be in vogue politically or whatever some of the higher-ups think is appropriate. And we're actually seeing that now on this issue that we've had to deal with about these sex change operations for these kids that they're doing. You know, that is something that is very much supported by a lot of medical elites in the United States. It's not supported by most of the European medical community because they're not necessarily partisan in their outlook. And Sweden, a lot of them have said, no, this is not good. There's not evidence for it. Our Board of Medicine has issued a rule saying that you can lose your license if you do it for these kids, and we have many of the people that had this and have grown up and now regret it, and they're testifying in favor of what we're trying to do. But you see something like that, and that would not have happened 20 years ago because it was more about where the evidence was going. Now it seems to be more following ideology. So that's very, very dangerous, but we need those individual brave physicians willing to speak out and buck the narrative and be able to speak the truth. And so we're seeing all this stuff, and Joe Ladapo is really, I think, the only one. Florida's still the only state that doesn't recommends against the mRNA shots for under 18. Actually, we recommend under 40 for males, right? Or under, yeah. when they came out with the baby jabs for the 6-month-old, Joe, we just said we're not doing it. So the health department has never had any of the baby jabs. I think every other health department in the country is helping to pass out these jabs for 6-month-old, 8-month-old, 15-month-old babies, and there's no evidence backing up the need or the desirability to jab these kids. And so that's why what we're doing. But what he's doing is he's bucking the consensus, not a very well-founded consensus, but it is the consensus. Certainly it's what Big Pharma wants, and so that's why a lot of these practitioners fall in the line. But Joe Ladapo has been willing to stand and say, you know what, that's not justified based on the evidence. And so I think a lot of parents really appreciate that. They appreciate the freedom to choose, but they also appreciate honest analysis, and so that they can make these decisions that's best for their family. So we're really excited. Yes, absolutely. We're really excited to be able to make it very clear that we're continuing to lead the way. I think these permanent reforms are going to be very, very good. People will be able to have great peace of mind. Because, I used to tell people during the election, I said, you have the CDC adding the COVID jabs for the childhood immunization schedule. People are going to use that around this country to justify mandates. You watch, it's going to happen. And I said, you don't have to worry about that as long as I'm around. And so we had it. So we're now being able to make good. We obviously did that. We've prevented it in Florida, but now it'll be a permanent feature of our law. And so I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do and what we're going to be able to accomplish. And we're going to continue to lead the way on all these different issues. I'm also really happy to be joined by, as I mentioned, our Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo is here. We have from the Dermatology Specialists of Florida, Dr. John Ward is here. We have Deidre Long, who's going to talk about health care and how they treated the shots for the employees, and she's going to explain her ordeal. We have Lauren Phillips, a mother that's enrolled, that has children enrolled in private school and can talk about some of these issues. And then Dr. Tim Boyette, radiologist here from the Panhandle. So first, we will hear from our Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo.
Hey, thank you guys. Thank you. So this is a cool setting. I understand that there's Elvis performances here. Is that right? So this is a pretty cool setting. This is fun. Yeah, this is a fun setting. I think there's going to be an after party after the event. Is that right? Is that what? So seriously, so there are two places, my two favorite places, I think, at this point in my life. The first place is with my family, my wife, my kids, my favorite place. My second most favorite place is flying around with the governor and coming to cool events. Because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And they're making it so easy because, is the governor... Is there anything but just clear thinking and common sense coming from this man? They're making it easy. Yeah, he is. Well, I agree with that. And it is true. It is all of these crazy ideas. Whether it's the lockdowns or the mask mandates or the vaccine mandates or the you can't have you can't cook with gas, you can't use fire, whatever it is, right? It's all these crazy ideas, and and then Governor DeSantis gets to say, no, that doesn't make sense, and he does it in a way we have fun. And it's just, I mean, it's like they're trying to make it easy, right? Well, so I'm happy that we have a lot of consensus around this new legislation to really codify more common sense in Florida, and I mean, honestly, I can't thank the governor enough, because there's no other state that's doing anything like this, and this is important. It really is important to, even though we are fortunate to have him, and none of that stuff would ever happen in Florida because of that, it's still important to make a statement and just have a counter voice, have a voice to the madness that is, and the lunacy that's unfortunately coming out of so many parts of this country and is still coming out. And the governor was mentioning how some of these school districts, in all their wisdom, felt that it was appropriate to have students, little kids, and colleges in some places come back with masks after the holidays, because that's been shown to be effective. I mean, so there's just a lot of lunacy out there, and having a place of just common sense and sensibility, I know that is refreshing to a lot of people here in Florida and outside of Florida. That's for sure. That's for sure. So we're talking about protecting physicians' speech, and we're talking about a lot of other things in terms of making some of these new laws that we have here in Florida essentially permanent, and even expanding them to some extent. And one of the things about speech, and which just makes the things that are happening in California even crazier, and that they've done the opposite. They've passed a law now that restricts physician speech and says physicians can only say certain things about COVID-19 of all things. So physicians can make up whatever they want about influenza or whatever other health condition. That's okay. But if you say something, they say the wrong thing about COVID-19, then that's against this new law that they've enacted. So it makes you think about, just to take in for a moment and reflect over the last few years about, well, what was in before it became out in terms of ideas, and the governor mentioned some of them. Right. So lockdowns were in, they're still in for some people, but the research has actually shown that while they may reduce transmission of whatever condition that you're guarding against, they come at tremendous cost. And there are some studies that have shown, for example, that even though, say, while COVID infections or COVID deaths might have come down during lockdowns, other deaths rose. And essentially, at least in the short term, you weren't really any better off. And frankly, in the long term, we all know that you're worse off, because there's just so many harms from locking people down, and the harms continue even after the policies end. They're extremely harmful, very harmful policies. So that's one example. Everyone remembers how the mask trilogy has evolved. It went from no mask, you don't need him, to wear a mask or a cloth mask, to don't wear a cloth mask, wear another mask, to wear two of them. And give me a break, right? So many things continue to evolve, and this is why it's not sensible. This is just one reason why it's not sensible to try and restrict speech from physicians. They should be allowed to say what they think, and they shouldn't be forced or essentially scared into feeling that they can't express themselves. That's profoundly unwise. And then there are other areas too where there ought to be room for diversity of opinion. So I thought of this as I was listening to the governor. I thought of this. So I'm going to do an informal survey here. So raise your hand if you think it's a good idea to give a baby a new medication that has never been shown to benefit that baby and is based on a new technology that we don't know that much about and continue to learn more about, right? Are there a lot of takers for that? Yeah. But that's what it is to take your baby and to have the government, to have CDC and FDA tell parents that they should inject their babies with mRNA shots. That is exactly what it is. Right? Never been shown to actually improve the health of a baby or a child. With high quality data, it's never been shown. It is totally new technology in humans, folks. And these people, they're always relentlessly trying to rewrite both history and reality. Right? Oh no, I read these articles about people where journalists and scientists would say, oh, it's not a new technology. We've had it for many years. Folks, this is the first time in history where we are using this technology widely in human beings. Previously, there were a few human beings essentially in clinical trials where it was used. So it is a new technology. You're telling people to put it in children, and you've never even shown the children to gain from it in terms of an actual health benefit. That's the land of crazy. You know, Florida is a land of sanity, and and we're gonna keep it that way. I'm gonna add one other thing. So just I was thinking about things to say. I'll pick this up. I was thinking about things to say. I almost can't make my mind up. But I feel compelled, and I didn't think I put this out of my mind, the mask stuff, because I figured by now most people would have abandoned it. But they just keep trying to resuscitate it. I was reading some articles. I was reading an article the other day where this writer is saying, telling people that they should demand that their doctors wear a mask, and because who wants to have someone else's breath on them and this and that, and so it apparently won't die. And of course, there are more articles that are essentially trying to convince Americans that it's a good idea to bring masks back. I'm seeing more of them lately. So they're persistent, so we've got to be persistent too. At the end of the day, folks, so there are two things. So first, there's a great video that maybe we'll put out that hopefully I'm sure it will change at least some minds. It's this doctor. It's a YouTube video, and it's this doctor, and he's smoking an e-cigarette, one of these vapor things. I don't want anyone doing it, but he's smoking one of these e-cigarettes, and then he puts a mask on and exhales. It's a great video. And the plumes, they're going everywhere, right? The air, it comes out, right? It just goes everywhere. You can see it, actually. And so you take that, right? Yes, they stop some droplets, but the air goes everywhere, folks. And then you add on top of that an airborne virus. And scientifically, it doesn't make sense that it would be an effective strategy to use, right? But then, say if that doesn't convince you, you look at the clinical trials that have been done during the pandemic, and the high quality ones, they show no benefit. There's basically no benefit that's been shown to wearing these masks around in the community, and that's the truth. So the studies where my colleagues often claim show that the masks are making a big difference and stuff. These are all lower quality studies. None of the clinical trials have shown this. So it just, let's keep trying to be healthy and eat well and exercise, put good stuff in our bodies, get outside, get vitamin D, keep moving, take care of each other, love each other, and also, be in an environment where we're loved. Let's keep trying to do those things. These masks, just say bye. Just say no. All right, thanks, guys. I did that last time. There we go. I got it.
All right. I do want to recognize I did not at first. Our Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Petronas, is here. Jimmy dragged me over the finish line in November, so thanks for that, buddy. We also have Congressman Neal Dunn. So, and when Dr. Latipo is talking about the ability for physicians to speak the truth, it's really important because I remember one of the things that we had to come in and ban. Well, I did an executive order saying no school forced masking for school kids. I had some of the liberal districts fight me. We were in court on all that. But, there were districts that had been doing it prior to me doing the order, and even from conservative areas. And they basically said, well, this is what CDC's telling us to do. And they didn't have other authorities to be able to rely on. So that's why they were doing it. They didn't necessarily, some of them didn't really even want, but they didn't feel like they had any medical evidence to do the opposite. And that's because a lot of people weren't speaking out. More and more people started to. But when we came in and did that, there was a lot of hooting and hollering in the media and all this other stuff. The reality is, we were right to do it, but there was not a lot of kind of expert opinion being willing to say that. Now they will say that. They will say the kids had problems learning, speech, all this other stuff. But a year and a half ago, they were not saying that. 2 years ago, they were not saying that. And so that's why it's important, because you get this echo chamber and it gets put out there as if it's so authoritative, and then that affects how people behave, and it affects how institutions make decisions from schools on up. So I think it's really, really important, and I think we look back at CDC over the last few years and how much credibility they've lost with their partisanship and their ideology, displacing really strong evidence-based analysis. And I don't know if it could ever get better, but I think it's really been very revealing for a lot of people. So we've actually created, with a lot of eminent scientists from around the country, our own organization here in Florida that can provide that type of authoritative response to some of the things the CDC and others are doing. And so if that would have been in place, that could have helped school districts around the country be able to have a lot of intellectual heft behind some of these really, really important policies. Okay, here to talk more about free speech for physicians is Dr. John Ward.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for having me here to speak. It's really an honor to be up here with Dr. Latipo, CFO Petronas, and Congressman Dunn, and everyone else. What I want to talk about is freedom. And freedom is something that for most of my life I've taken for granted. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what the Founding Fathers promised us, and that is what the government is supposed to protect. But over the last few years, our federal government used fear to control us and to mislead us. They denied us our most basic freedoms. And worst of all, it was our children who suffered the most. What we've learned from the revelations of the Twitter files, beyond a shadow of a doubt, big tech, big pharma, and Big Brother work together to silence the voices of doctors and medical scientists who tried to lead our country in a different direction. Whether we like it or not, social media is the new digital town square. And if you showed up to that town square and said, masks don't work, and they've never in the history of medical science shown to stop the spread of a respiratory virus, you were put in lockup. If you wanted to say that young people are at very low risk from any ill effects from COVID, but new mRNA shots have real risks with serious complications, you were labeled a spreader of misinformation. And that brings me to a very important point. What is misinformation? And who gets to decide what misinformation is? Time and time again, we see that yesterday's medical misinformation is today's medical fact. And this country and our federal government allowed a credentialed class of unelected bureaucrats and woke elites decide for us what we could think. These people said that children should have absolutely no choice in whether or not they sat in a classroom all day long covered in a dirty mask. Yet these same people think those same children can decide that they were born into the wrong bodies and have irreversible surgeries that mutilate their bodies forever. The credentialed class through state medical boards and national certifying bodies threaten physicians like me who speak out against their outrageous proclamations. Physicians have to be free to debate public policy and give their patients individualized medical advice. And Governor DeSantis supports the strongest free speech protection for physicians in America. And when we get this done, this legislative session, I will be honored to be in a group of the freest doctors who take care of the freest patients in the freest state in America. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great job. Okay, Deidre Long. You ready? All right. Floor is yours.
I don't have a fancy book, so. All right. Hi, my name is Deidre, and I'm a proud mom of 2 plus a bonus kiddo. I was a surgical tech in the OR, and mandates forced me out of healthcare. I was very sick with COVID in February 2020 and suffered from long COVID. Because of this, the doctor strongly urged me to take the jab. I even set up appointments just to discuss that subject. Ultimately, the decision was made for me as my new job forced the jab despite the fact that I worked from home. My life changed after my second dose of Pfizer. I suffered left side facial paralysis and body weakness. At first, I had difficulty getting words out, and then it progressed to stuttering and slurred speech. My arms and legs began to jump and jerk and felt like they were on fire all the time. I had head pain so severe that I could no longer listen to my children's laughter or singing without pain and convulsing, and my beautiful kids feeling guilt. I missed my kids' soccer games, and the extreme fatigue, tremors, and spasms made me unsafe to drive my children to school. I couldn't care for myself, and I was basically bedridden at 36. I am now 14 months into this nightmare, and I still cannot do normal things like clean my house or go on a walk with my family. Instead of taking care of my children, they now help take care of me. My children are my whole world, and this is the worst punishment of all. Doctors still have no clue how to help me. I face the real trauma of being gaslit and dismissed with every new appointment. When I cry out for help online, I am silenced. I got the jab to keep my job, and I can no longer work. We are real people. We are not disinformation, and we are sadly not rare. Thank you, Governor DeSantis and his team, for their diligence to give a platform for truth and freedom of informed consent, to help not just Floridians, but the many injured across the country to be seen, heard, and believed. Only then can true healing begin. Thank you.
Lauren?
Goodness, I am so sorry to hear Deidre's story. My name is Lauren Phillips. I am a nurse anesthetist, so I spend most of my days in the operating room. I'm a mother of 4, very soon to be 5 children. If I'm short of breath up here, a lot of it's the baby, a little bit of nerves, mostly the baby though. My husband and I happen to have 2 children who have congenital heart defects. So obviously, careful thought and consideration goes into all the decisions we make for them and all of our children, whether it's regarding their medical care or their education. All of our children are very young, so they are in the rapid stages of development: speech, language, social, emotional development. We were also sending 2 of our children to school learning English as a second language. So it's very important to us when seeking out schools, knowing who was going to be requiring masks and who was not. We believe that for our children, and really all children, it's very important for them to see their teachers' faces, to see their teachers smile back at them, to see their expressions from their teachers and their peers. That is how children learn. The parochial school that we decided to send our kindergartner to assured us that they would not be requiring masks, leaving the decision up to parents, which is what we feel is in the best interest of most children, a parent's freedom to choose what is best for their child in their situation. Unfortunately, 2 days after school started, we learned that the school would now be implementing a mask mandate regardless of a parent's wishes. To say we were angry and frustrated is an understatement. Any attempts to speak with school administration regarding real data on the extremely low transmission rate to children, or any case about mask choice or anything, what just fell on deaf ears. We felt really completely disempowered as parents. We didn't know our son's teachers. We didn't know their peers. We were not allowed to step foot on campus. In a kindergarten environment that should be fun and carefree, instead, there were partitions between each of the children's desks, masks on everyone's faces, and now this burden of fear and anxiety was placed on our children. I think a lot of parents would agree with me that these early years in education, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, are some of the most special and sweet times with your children. Well, for parents and children, actually. Their Christmas programs, their muffins with mom, school mass, and we missed out on all of it. As we all know how fleeting time is, it's honestly devastating as a parent to know that we'll never get that time back with our children. We understand that there was a lot of fear and panic with regards to COVID, but it's exactly in those times of fear that we need strong leadership. Leadership not to cave. Yes. We need leadership with courage not to cave into fear, but to make smart, sound decisions. Unfortunately, our school and many others decided to give in to fear, which then placed a burden of anxiety and fear onto our children, a burden that children should not have to carry. And the implications of that were far and wide. Luckily for the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis did not give in to that fear and panic. In a time where hard decisions had to be made, he had the courage to make those hard but smart and sound decisions when the rest of the country was cowering. We are forever grateful to Governor DeSantis. For his courage to protect our freedoms that our veterans fought with their lives to protect. Thank you. God bless.
Okay, Dr. Tim Boyette.
Thank you very much. Governor DeSantis, thank you for your courage and boldness. I want to thank you, Governor and Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo, for fighting to preserve medical liberty for both the patient and the healthcare provider. And I like to say, make no mistake, Florida leads the way and is the impact state. Funny story, driving here in Destin, we stopped at a coffee shop and someone noticed my tie and said, hey, you've got a nice tie. And it's 3 young people that were working at the coffee shop and they kind of asked where I was going. So I said, I'm getting a chance to meet with the governor in an hour. And you'd be shocked. Their eyes opened up and a countenance of joy and hope came upon them. I promise you this. Three young 20-ish-year-olds, 21, 22 years old. And they're like, we love the governor. And one of them had just moved from guess which state? Go ahead. California, yes. So, anyway, we are the impact state. 2 Timothy 1:7 states, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Mandates and policies based upon federal health officials' recommendations over the past few years have left many feeling powerless, angry, and confused. So, however, these challenging, seemingly upside-down years have brought many of us, including myself, closer in our faith with our Heavenly Father. And I want to encourage you, in recognition of that, encourage you to reach out and call out to Jesus and seek first the kingdom of God. Florida, under the leadership of Governor DeSantis and Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo, are empowering Floridians. And I can see that Dr. Ladapo, he gets it. True health comes from what we eat, what we think, and what we do with our body continually. And he is leading the Department of Health towards an individual and community empowerment in these realms. And so I'm a husband of 22 years. I'm a father of 2 sons. We live in the Panhandle. I've been a practicing physician for 20 years and graduated from the University of South Florida College of Medicine in 2002. Thank you. Been fortunate to be on the medical faculty at the University of Florida and Florida State University previously. I'm no longer under faculty there, but now serve as a radiologist physician at a local hospital in the Panhandle. I've also created and own and run a wellness practice there in Gulf Breeze. When the mandate requiring the COVID-19 vaccine came on the scene, I had already recovered from an acute COVID-19 illness with a 3-day early treatment regimen by a colleague and friend of mine in Gulf Breeze. And so at that time, I did not desire to receive an injection for a viral illness for which I had already recovered, knowing that I had natural immunity, and the early science showed robust activity with respect to natural immunity. And so I also, and this is important because it speaks to what you've heard today, I had 2 immediate family members that had significant adverse reactions to their first vaccines. And when I saw that, and I've kind of helped them through things with respect to therapy and off-label treatment to help them get back to more state of normal, it's been challenging to see that there are other people that have had these same types of adverse reactions that you heard about today. And so I didn't want to get the vaccine. And so initially, though, despite my natural immunity, I applied for a religious exemption but was not offered that. But around that time, obviously, Governor DeSantis saved our job and saved my job. He stopped vaccine mandates, and he saved hundreds of my other staff jobs there in the Panhandle. And I just can't thank you enough for that. And on behalf of those staff, they thank you. Mm-hmm. To be clear, the mandates were originally put in place because authorities originally believed, 1, that they were safe and effective. These vaccines were safe and effective. 2, that they would reduce transmission significantly. And 3, that there was no effective outpatient early treatment protocol. Since then, evidence is amassed showing that none of these 3 presumptions are true. Regarding early treatment, because of my early experience getting COVID and being treated with a 3-day treatment regimen that actually worked well in me. Of course, it doesn't work great in everyone, and you may need to continue treatment, but I decided to start treating acute COVID patients, and we've treated 160 COVID patients acutely. We've had 0 deaths and 1 hospitalization. I credit this success to open discourse and discussion amongst doctors. Freedom of speech allows for the truth, vetting of truth, and for truth to rise. And many doctors are around in this state, in this country, and in this world that are spreading this information collaboratively. And we're helping save patients and keep them out of the hospital. There are many doctors that are treated thousands, many more than I have treated, and have had similar success ratio. So it's just something important to recognize. So in summary, I want to thank you, Governor DeSantis. I want to thank you, Dr. Joseph Ladapo. And I want to encourage you out there, whoever you're listening, where can you battle with the freest doctors and with the freest patients and with the freest business owners and with the Governor DeSantis and Dr. Ladapo? Where is your battle that you can help us, again, push this great free state of Florida? And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You know, the thing is, like, one of the things I think part of it was medical freedom, but when COVID came, it was like the medical authorities did not want to look at treatment of it. They were saying, okay, wear a mask, don't leave your house, this, then on the vaccine, take mRNA shots, and that. And I had to roll out, a couple years ago, a year and a half ago, I had to roll out these early treatment sites with monoclonal antibodies for people. And I got attacked for doing that. You know, they attacked me for doing this. And, well, if you want to treat people, you know, that somehow that I didn't want, you know, it was odd. But why would I need to be doing the early treatment? I mean, honestly, I'm a governor. Like, the medical community should have been doing this. I mean, seriously. You know, you had different treatments, and it's like they didn't want to do, and then as people start getting infected, they yell at them about the vaccine. So guess what? Once you have something, a vaccine doesn't undo the infection. It's ridiculous. Why not worry about the treatment And it was almost like people didn't want to talk about it. A lot of people, even physicians in Florida, didn't know about treatments, available. So we ended up doing these monoclonals, and it helped a lot of people. I mean, it kept many, many thousands. You did it? Yeah, it kept many thousands of people out of the hospital, and probably saved thousands of lives as well, because we had some very elderly, frail people who had infection and got it and got cleared up very quickly. But I just, it's sad that it came to me having to organize my division of emergency management and set up sites all over. Look, I'm happy to do it. I mean, I was happy. I have people that come up to me to this day and thanking me for the monoclonal. So that's just what you do. You help people in this job. And I was happy to do it because there was a need for it. But, man, this should have been something that people were getting right at the beginning of this. And that just wasn't what happened. And so I think part of it is this groupthink and trying to push an agenda. So what we're doing here, I think, is going to have really positive ramifications, not just now, but far into the future. Okay, last, but certainly not least. Well, actually, since he's from Washington, maybe least. A lot of issues. We just had, Jimmy and I just had a meeting of the Florida cabinet, and we had a fellow, great guy, who went over Florida's bond ratings and all that other stuff. And so our debt per capita in the state of Florida is one of the lowest in the country. If you calculated how much debt each Floridian, you take Florida's debt and apply it to each Floridian, it's like, what, $764 per person is what you would owe for our debt. Compare that with the federal debt, which is $31 trillion. That's like, what, $91,000 for every American to be able to do our debt, and that's more than most people make in an entire year. And so you see that the debt nationally is bigger than the entire economy is. In Florida, our GDP, if we were our own country, I think we'd be 13th biggest economy in the world now. It's over $1 trillion. Our debt is what, like 20 billion? $20 billion. So it's like 1.5% or something, our debt to GDP ratio. U.S. government is like 140% debt to GDP ratio. So, you think about, like, policy does matter. Doing things, making sound decisions does matter. And if you look at what they did over the last 2 years, with Biden, but also with Pelosi and Schumer, more spending and debt than any time in modern American history. And it was just a few years ago that we were at like 20 trillion in debt, which was a lot. And somehow, it just in a matter of a few years, you're up to over $30 trillion in debt. So there's a lot of problems in Washington. We worked really hard in Florida to elect as many Republicans as we could to the Congress and in the elections, and did pretty well. And so that was good. And so now, Pelosi is no longer Speaker. And so come on, Neal.
It's great to be here. It's a great honor to be here. Iran is actually one of my very favorite constituents. But he could be a little cranky. He complains a lot about Washington. Can you imagine that? But I can't thank you enough. But no, he's really done an outstanding job of protecting freedom for everybody in the state of Florida. But nobody is more grateful for you and should be more grateful to you than the medical care professionals who have finally been allowed to give some voice to this and have free opinions. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Latipo, for your words about common sense. For the love of God, common sense. You've done a great job thinking your way through this. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. I want you, give it up to them. Give it up for both of them. So I know that under this leadership, Florida, is the greatest state, is the freest state. I want it to continue to be that way. I want to help you in Washington, but I got an idea, Ron. Maybe you could come help. Wait here. Yeah.
All right, well, we're excited to be able to prescribe freedom. We look forward to being able to work through these many issues in the upcoming legislative session. And I'm excited to have so many great people that have really rallied behind, particularly a lot of our free-thinking physicians. You know, I mean, we want our doctors to be people you look up to, you know, and it's like, and when they're able to speak the truth, when the medical establishment is telling people things that are just not true, it really undermines, I think, credibility in the profession overall. But I really believe the vast majority of physicians understand some of the nonsense that's gone on over the last few years, and I think are committed, certainly in Florida, to getting it right and to shooting it straight with people. And that's just, people just want the facts. And when you refuse to acknowledge things that are happening before you that we can all see with our own two eyes, that's devastating in terms of the credibility it has on the profession. So I think what we're doing here, protections for every Floridian, very important, expanding some of those protections, which is also important. But you're now going to have Florida become the state, if a very high-quality physician is driven out of California, this is going to be the first place people are going to want to go. And so just remember, these things don't happen by themselves. It requires a lot of hard work. We could have had many different decisions made over the last few years that would have sent us on a much different direction. So we're going to continue standing for what's right. We're going to continue to protect freedom, and we are going to make sure that our state remains the freest state in these United States. Thank you.